All right, Rishi, what is going on? Welcome to the second CobraCast Fireside Chat, whatever we're calling it, sponsored,
Mhm.
not sponsored. I'm not getting paid for this, but brought to you by the SIGRO Alumni Foundation. You are Rishi Ray, founding father Maximus, Kappa Alpha, but no one in the fraternity knows who you are. So what do you want? What do you want Cobra Nation to know about you before we kind of get into things?
Wow. I pledged fall 2001 officially. We were Kappa Alphas. We were the first multicultural fraternity on University of Rochester campus. Before that, there was none. Um, wow, 2001. What is that? 23 years ago, 22 and a little change. So yeah, me, three other guys, Ajay, Sippy, Neil, Parthi, Samit, we all brought that fraternity onto campus, and we didn't know where it would go. And wow, it went a lot of places.
Yeah, man. And here we are. Here I am because you guys started this, so that's all.
Yeah.
So you're welcome.
Yeah.
No, that's what I should be saying. But
Yeah.
what do we have today? What are you sipping on?
I am sipping on a wheated bourbon called Weller 107.
Mm,
It's made by the Buffalo Trace Distillery. It's 107 proof. It's wheat, corn, and malted barley. And this one is a single barrel pick from our local Denver liquor store called Argonaut. So it's their private barrel.
drink local.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite bourbons. And so I figured I'd bust it out for this conversation.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. What are you drinking?
So I just finished dinner right before this call, so I'm doing something very after dinner. I got a nice, very sherried Redbreast Lestat, luscious sherry bomb, and just
It's funny you have that because I was deciding between this one and this one, the Redbreast 12 cask strength.
mm,
And I was like, you know what? Let me get something American for this
oh,
conversation
ooh,
because I know you were going to
traitor.
go with something European.
Hey, at least it's not Scotch this time, so that's
Yeah. No,
different.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised. The
Yeah,
Redbreast is awesome.
it is.
I do fully support your choice.
So one of the things I want to talk to you about is well, reading especially. You know, you're a writer, and we'll get to
Hmm.
your books shortly, but naturally to be a writer, you have to be a reader.
Hmm.
And you've recommended a number of books to me over the years, all of
Which
which
you
I've read.
hated.
Yeah, that's my biggest question is why is your taste in literature so poor?
I think my taste in Friends is poor. I think my taste in literature is fine.
Amazing.
You know
Mm,
what it is? It's just, it depends on when you read something, what point of life you're at.
mhm.
Like certain times you go through an experience and you find a book that speaks to that experience, and then you recommend it to somebody who's in a totally different part of their life. They read it and they're like, what is this nonsense? Right. So
100%.
I feel like books are very subjective based on what is going on in your life. And so there are very there are a couple of books that I have recommended to you that you have enjoyed. I think Hyperion was one of them.
Hyperion was the best one for sure.
Yeah. Hyperion was great. I am starting to read a book that you recommended to me. You actually gave it to me, Journey by Moonlight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I started reading it and I really enjoyed it, but then I got caught up in wedding planning.
Dude, you were supposed to finish that before the wedding. It's very much a pre-wedding book.
I know, but like I didn't have a chance to read anything before the wedding. It was just, you've
That's
been
fair.
through a wedding, you know what it is, right?
Yep. Yep.
But I am looking forward to getting back to it because I did enjoy the first chapter. And so, right.
What'd you think of the Dostoevsky, the Death of Ivan Ilyich?
It it is not a book that you're supposed to enjoy.
No,
I
no.
right. And so I didn't go into it thinking I would enjoy it. And I was right. I didn't enjoy it, but I was captured by it because he's talking about death, right? He's talking about finding something on his body that then slowly accelerates and that he's facing death. And it is the most Russian novel you could ever read, right? He's basically in a room thinking about dying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, this is, I don't know why Ari recommended me this book, but I did read it, and after I read it, I just had to take a break from reading for a while because the intensity of the book, right? I appreciate the intensity
Mhm.
and the skill behind the story, but Russian novels are not things you can read
Yeah, and that's
back
fair.
to
I mean,
back.
it's a short one written at the end of his
Yeah.
life, and it's not as intensive of an imposition as, say, um, Demons or Brothers Karamazov, which is
Hmm.
like 800 pages. This is like 100, 120.
Hmm.
It's, existential, and it is what it is. But I remember, yeah, when I first read that in my early 20s, it was very impactful. So I want to get you something that would at least leave a mark.
Leave a mark, leave me traumatized. Yeah, so you succeeded.
Good.
I do remember I recommended something to you and I was really excited about it. And you sent me an email like a month later and you're like, why did you recommend this book? It was awful. I think it was Haruki Murakami.
Oh God, yeah, I cannot with him.
I can't with him either, but that was one book I read in like my late 20s and I that spoke to me, but I don't think I would enjoy it going back to it.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that because all his characters are effectively bachelors. Well, not his characters, his protagonists are bachelors.
Hmm.
And as someone in your 20s experiencing certain things and trying to find someone to relate. I mean, they're all
Yeah,
very selfish too.
right. And very
So,
self-involved and
yeah.
they're constantly in their own heads.
Hmm.
So what are you reading now?
Right now, I'm wrapping up Children of Dune.
Okay.
That was my gift to myself after finishing the term end of December. I'm like, I'm gonna read a book for pleasure again because I didn't really like reading for a long time after grad school, and then
Mm,
I'd been recommended Dune numerous times. Jamie actually was the last person to recommend it, and I finally picked it up, I think in 2020, and it was like the first book that I could really enjoy
mm,
reading again. I was just crushing it. I'm like, this is so fascinating. I mean, it's not just the Machiavellian um,
mm,
symbolic interaction of the characters, but the worlds, and I was just totally engrossed. So
mm.
I've been reading. I read Messiah last year, the second one, and now I'm on the third, and I'm gonna stop after that because I've heard it goes downhill from there.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Have you watched the first Dune film, the latest one? What did you think?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, the David Lynch one was not oh God, it was I mean, it's an art piece. It's a Hearst type film. I really enjoyed the new one, and Hans Zimmer does an incredible job on the soundtrack. The casting was great.
Mm.
They really, I mean, they over dramatized it, but it's
I mean,
crystal.
the book itself is very dramatized, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit melodramatic, but yeah.
Well, it was interesting because I was wondering how they would do the adaptation because so much of the book is inner monologue,
Mm,
um, and just kind of how people respond to things and how are they going to enact that on the screen? How are they going to do the voice, the Bene Gesserit voice? And I mean, it was kind of weird with a kind of really deep thing, but overall, I thought it was fantastic. Yeah.
that's great.
I, Go ahead.
It's by directed by one of my favorite directors, Denis Villeneuve. I
Hmm.
don't know if you've seen his other films, Sicario,
Yeah, Sicario was
Arrival.
incredible.
Yeah,
Dana got
he's
me on
great.
that.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Hmm.
But speaking of films, I think I told you about this. I recently watched a film that you had sent me the trailer for, American Fiction.
Yeah,
Have you had a chance to watch that yet?
not yet, not yet.
It is great. It is such a great satire, and they do a great job of like bringing up the topic of like race and literature and what is expected of different races when they write.
Hmm.
And but they did it in a way that wasn't preachy or overbearing. It was actually really funny, really heartwarming. So I would recommend that film. That film is great.
And Jeffrey Wright's a phenomenal actor too. I really enjoyed him in
Yeah,
Westworld
he is.
and some other
He's great in
productions.
everything he does.
I was surprised though. I didn't know it was based on a book that was written, I think, in the early 2000s, which surprised me just given the timing of that. I would have expected to be much more recent, given the kind of how much we've digested that since
Mhm.
that period.
But I think writers of color were facing the issues brought up in the film for a long time, but only now in this climate was it ready to be made into a film, and were people ready to accept that?
Hmm.
I don't think back then people were really thinking about what writers of color were facing in terms of presenting their work to a larger audience.
Yeah. Yeah, timing is everything. And in that era, let's see, I think Chappelle Show was still on to give you a sense,
Yeah.
where I guess racial comedy was. And I mean, he left because of how it was being commodified and
Hmm.
as such outside of his intended his audience's viewership. His new special is, yeah, we won't go to that here. It's too controversial.
Yeah.
This
This is a
audience.
family show.
Family show, yeah. The kids are watching. So in terms of writing now, I mean, you just finished, pulled it off from the shelf, your third novel,
Hmm.
which you did inscribe this one, right? No. Oh yeah, you did. You did inscribe it. And you've matured as a novelist, undoubtedly from reading your other works, and it's great to see, to kind of have the characters as well kind of come into a fuller arc in a second book. Um, tell me about tell me about how you've made this happen over the years. I mean, it's no small feat to them to one novel, let alone three. How have you
Yeah.
balanced that with, you know, work commitments, family, etc.?
Right. I mean, good question. I think I didn't write my first novel until I was 31 or 32, I don't remember. And before that, I had been living and working in New York. I was a creative director at an advertising agency. And advertising is just all in, right? Like I would be working 12-hour days, weekends. And so it didn't leave a lot of time for writing. And I knew that writing fiction was always what I wanted to do. Like I started off writing screenplays, and the better I did in my career, the less time I had to work on things that were actually important to me. So in 2012, I went freelance because I was like, okay, if I work freelance, I can work a couple of months, make money, and then take a few months off and write. And so I was doing that for about 2 years, and I wasn't getting as much time to write as I wanted in New York, just because the city distracts you at every turn. And I eventually had to move back home. I think I was 32 and I moved back to my parents' place in New Jersey. I was still freelancing here and there, but not having to pay rent was such a huge freedom.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, if I'm going to be a 32-year-old man living in my parents' house, like I have to make this count. And so I wrote my first novel there, and then I wrote my second novel there. And I had to give myself that time to work on those things. Because if I continued working full time, I feel like I would have just gotten more and more frustrated, more and more irritated with the direction my life was going. And so, to me, I just had to give myself that block of a year or 2 years to really focus on the books. And then once I wrote my first two books, um, the third one I was able to write while freelancing because I knew I could do it, right? I wasn't afraid of writing one anymore. And so the time that I had between work and my social life, like I was able to use it more constructively and work on that novel. So I would say for anyone in a similar position trying to figure out what their passion project is in between work and family is you have to most likely in the beginning carve out a good chunk of time and take that time away from your day job or your social life and just focus on that project.
hmm What was your work ethic like? Were you doing it like first thing in the morning or evenings? How did you kind of do that?
So I would do it first thing in the morning. I would generally start writing at 9 a.m. and I would write from 9 to 12. And didn't mean like I was writing hardcore nonstop for 3 hours. It means that was my time where I was only writing. I wouldn't go on the internet before 12. And then once I had gotten that block of writing done, no matter whether it was a good day or a bad day, I was like, okay, I have dedicated the time I needed today to what is important. And then the
Mhm.
rest of the day was my own. Like I could go work out, I could hang out with friends, family, whatever, work on small freelance projects. But it was always like that 3 hour block in the morning, 9 to 12.
Mm. Yeah, the discipline's super important. And I'm doing my own little passion project now. I mean, that's the PhD, right?
You're
So
right.
it's I've done a few screenplays when I was living in LA, which was, just also passion projects, just fun ways to kind of play out ideas, never intending to it to go anywhere, but just to kind of give
Mm-hmm.
some sort of life, some structure to these ideas and
Mm-hmm.
see how it panned out. But and I still have ideas which I keep written down, but there's no time anymore.
Right.
And because the PhD takes up your life, and I'm teaching now as well. It's just
Really?
it adds on to all the commitments.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, right? Like when you take on more and more responsibility, and especially you in academia, like I don't think I could write a PhD thesis and then switch my brain over to writing fiction. Like, because all the energy is on one thing.
It's a lot of creative energy, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. But I mean, I hope you get back to writing one day. Because I used to read your screenplays and, then they stopped.
Yeah, then they stopped. Other forms of creative expression were required, but we'll see. There's a lot of uncertainty in the future, and I'm not even sure if I'll stay in academia. It's not a function of well, I shouldn't say that. There's just so many variables, right? Especially,
Mm,
I mean, there's being in the UK, and if I gonna stay here, am I gonna go back to the States? There's parents, getting older, that kind of stuff.
mm,
There's the job markets. There's also it pays terribly. So
mm,
yeah, I'm doing this just to do it because I've never stopped thinking about it. But
mm.
the end game was never clear. So
But are you considering coming back to the States and, you and Moral setting up shop here?
it's possible, but not where I'm looking. I mean, I just saw a posting today for a postdoc at Penn which does exactly the kind of stuff that I'm doing, which would just be paid research, and it paid generously as well. And I
Mm,
love Philly as a city, one of my favorite
mm.
cities in the U.S. So that would be enticing, but that would mean leaving Europe, and Europe is great for a lot of reasons. Um,
It
so
is. It is. I was talking to Maha, my wife, about this, and there was um this commentator, I forgot his name, and he's like, why do so many Americans look back at college as the best time of their life? Right? And he's
mhm,
like, it doesn't have to do with the fact that you were partying and drinking and you were young. It had to do with the fact that you were, for the first and last time in American life, living in a walkable community where your entire friend group was within walking distance and you walked to classes and everything was around you. And that's a very European idea. Like in
yep.
Edinburgh, London, you can walk places. You can walk to friends' houses depending on where they live. And it's like you only have that 4 year period of that lifestyle in college, and then you're just shot out into a suburb or somewhere where you're driving and you're isolated and you can't really have that sense of city community living. And I mean, I get it. I get it why you love Europe. Like, because whenever we visit, that's what we love about it. Walking down the street, cafes, just being part of something.
And so many cultures on top of each other. I mean, you think about the size of Europe juxtaposed to the US.
Mm-hmm.
They're comparable, but there's so many countries here, each with different languages and cultures. And so the intersections are really interesting, but also whereas it's like a couple $100 for me to fly halfway across the country. I was in Brussels last weekend for Moral's birthday, like
Mm,
less than 100 pounds round trip, just to have some Belgian beers and mussels
yeah.
and what have you. And it's cheap, it's walkable, it's fun. Met some random Dutch and Argentinians at the bar, just like, kibitzing, what have you.
Yeah.
It's just it's a whole different approach to life, which I feel like
Which we don't have.
right. The cost of living doesn't help, just inflation. I mean, there's healthcare, all these factors really weigh on the kind of disposable income and the experiences you can have. And it's just I find much more manageable out here.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Maha and I just bought our first place together, and it's
Also,
kind of, yeah, it's a little bit outside of Denver, so it's a little bit suburban. But I also think we've kind of reached a point in our life where we kind of are homebodies, and we like to have a home base where we can invite our friends. Because right now both of us live in apartments, and we're not able to socialize as much in our apartments as we'd like, and so it's a different type of lifestyle here in America, right? Like you have a bigger house, you have a backyard, you can invite friends over, but at the same time, you're driving everywhere, you know?
right, unless you're in a large city, which has its own kind of
Yeah, I
issues.
mean, yeah, exactly, exactly. But I mean, I loved Edinburgh the last time we were there with both of you. We went to a bunch of really great whiskey bars, went to that great bookstore, you
Hmm.
know. I love Edinburgh. We're gonna try to come back there this year.
Please do.
I'll
Come for
bring you
the
the gold spot finally.
come for the whiskey fringe. It's
Hmm.
the
What's the date?
let me sometime in August. I don't think it's been announced yet, but
If it's in
it's
August, I most likely won't be able to come. But if you're there next year, which I hope you are, and
I
then
will be. I'll
we'll
be
have to
here until I'm kicked out.
forever
I'll be here.
for all time.
Yeah, I'm gonna go whiskey number two.
What do you got?
This is
Carnmore.
Carn Morris. This is an independent bottler. This
Okay.
is a 9-year-old Speyside from Tormore Distillery. No one's really heard of Tormore because it doesn't do its own releases. This
Mm-hmm.
is often used in Chivas blends, but
Mm-hmm.
the independent bottlers will do a strictly limited release. It wasn't that expensive, but yeah, delicious. This is slightly peated. It's really
Mm.
light, just like a wisp of peat. It's not overbearing at all.
What's the
But
proof on it?
this is 47.5%.
Okay. Light drinking.
Yeah, it's a Saturday.
It's snowing outside, and so this is the perfect weather to just like sit here and
That's
kibitz
the
with
one.
a
Mhm. Cozy weather. We don't get snow. That's one of the things that I mean, when it happens, it's rare. It really adds to the charm. But because Edinburgh is kind of this microclimate, it never really snows. And when it does, it doesn't stick. It just kind of melts right away.
but Scotland has the best oysters in the world, I learned last time I went, because of the temperature of your water. Your water is cold year round. And so that keeps the oysters, I don't know, it breeds a certain type of oyster. And so, I mean, I've had oysters in Seattle, I've had oysters other places, but Scotland oysters are the best
Where
in the
did you
world.
go for oysters here?
That fish market, do you know where that is?
No.
It was like a 20-minute drive from your wedding location, from the hotel we stayed at.
Hmm.
So it was in like downtown Edinburgh,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, by the water, where the lighthouse is.
Yep, yep. In
Yeah,
Leith. Mhm.
there's a pier with like restaurants and stores. Like
Oh,
it's like
yep. I know where that is now, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
that place fish market. Oh, so we had oysters first time there back in 2022. My family did a trip to Scotland,
That's
and it
right.
was incredible. So after your wedding, Maha and I went straight there.
Mm. Oh, it's delicious.
I wonder if I should
Yeah.
move on to whiskey number two.
Yeah, you should.
All right, I haven't finished this one yet. Give me a second.
Well, I know it's earlier there too, so that's a fair play.
So what's going on with you? What do you guys have planned?
I'm just writing, man. Teaching's taking up a fair amount of time,
What are
and
you
it's not,
teaching?
I'm doing a course called Internet Society and Economy, which
Hmm.
kind of intersects with all my research interests. Um, which is interesting. It's fun. It's just time away from actual research I'm going to be doing. So I'm in my third year now of four. That's kind of how Europe, at least British PhDs tend to be structured. They say you can do it in three. No one does it in three.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I basically have a year to write the actual thesis. Apparently, it's a dissert. It's interesting. So we call it in the U.S. your PhD is a dissertation, and your undergraduate master's writing is a thesis.
Hmm.
It's the opposite in the UK. So I always have to kind of remember which one's which when I'm talking to people from different cultures, different backgrounds.
Mm.
But yeah, so I'll basically have a year to write this, and over the course of that, it's obviously conference season in the summer, so I'll be prepping for those as well. And then after you submit, it's usually about 2 or so months, then defend. But in that time,
Mm.
also be applying to postdocs. And generally, one of the ways that UK and US PhDs differ is that postdoc is much more of a stepping stone in the UK, whereas in the US, it's much more common to go right directly from PhD
Mm.
mm, to assistant professor. Or sorry, assistant associate. I always mix them up. Whatever whatever the lower tier one is.
Yeah. Ari, I think you belong back in Fort Collins. I think that is the place for you. It has great beer, it has great hiking, it has, well, I don't even know what the academic opportunities are there, but I think you'll find one and you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy Colorado a lot. I don't know if Colorado State would does I don't think they do what I do, but in terms of my area, which is like digital stuff and
Hmm.
like sociology of work.
Well, you could start the department.
Boulder might be actually a decent fit for it, but and Morrill
Oh
might
yeah.
keen on doing policy stuff
I'm
there.
I'm just trying to get you and Morrill back to Colorado.
I know everyone's trying to get me back, but I think it's everyone's way of saying we wish we were where you are and to
Hmm.
get less guilty about it.
All right, we're moving on to the next one. Redbreast 12
Oof.
year cask strength Irish whiskey. This comes in at 112.6 proof.
Did you know that proof is different in the US and UK?
I've heard that, but I don't know what the difference is.
I'm gonna look it up real quick because it's not an easy thing you can roll off the tongue. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, because here it's just double, right? Like
Right.
whatever the ABV is, it's just double.
Yeah, like that makes sense. That's
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, but I don't know why it's so complicated. I was having this conversation with someone in Europe and I left more confused than I started.
Okay, so in the UK, instead of double, it's 1.7 times the percentage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just
Why is it different? Who knows? Who
who
knows?
knows?
I'm sure there's a history on this, but I'm not going to look into it now. But it makes things more. That's why I just do the percentage. It's easier.
Hold on. I'm going to take a picture of my screen with my two whiskey balls on either side, and I'm going to send it to our group. All right, smile, Ari. That's great. All right, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, we'll send them the link as well. They can watch the whole interview.
Yeah. Are you ever going to interview Dr. Dani?
Dr. Donnie is a very elusive and enigmatic character. So
Which is why I think your interview with him is going to be a blockbuster. You're going to get like millions of views. Everybody's
millions.
been wondering what Dr. Dani's been up to.
Everyone. I mean, who knows? He doesn't even know what he's been up to.
He texts me randomly, and then when I respond to him, like he doesn't reply. So I'm like, why did you text me in the first place?
Yeah, yeah. It's always something stupid too. A guy with a brain that big, and the texts are always just
Yeah.
the opposite.
For those who don't know, Dr. Donnie was my line brother.
Yes, yes. Well, brilliant, brilliant man.
Brilliant, but disturbed individual.
So how has married life been, the transition? I mean, let's see, it's February now. Your wedding was in
September.
September. So it's been like 5 months.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been about 5 months. I mean, it's been pretty much the same, and the reason being because um we don't live together yet. Like we just got a
Mhm.
place and we're in the process of moving our separate apartments into one home. And so starting at the end of this month, we'll be living together, but it's been pretty much the same, right? Like, we still go out, we enjoy, we spend time together, we travel. We weren't able to do a honeymoon after the wedding. And so we did our honeymoon in December. We went to Mexico City,
Mm.
which was fantastic. But yeah, I think married life has been good, you
Well,
know.
you haven't changed yet, so because yeah, once you cohabitate, that'll be a bit different.
It'll be a transition, but I think it'll be fine.
Hmm.
I, we have the house has like a basement bar built in. So I was like, that'll be my man cave.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, with all those bottles that you've squirreled away in every single cabinet in your flat. It's like
The,
when I first came over your flat in before I moved here, so it's about like maybe 4 years ago. You had a
21,
tiny, what's that?
2021, you were
Yeah,
here.
3 years ago. You had like
Mhm.
a tiny little, bar cart with a handful of bottles, and now you have what, like 100 whiskeys or so? Just
Close to that, close to
Mhm.
that. I went through a little bit of a hoarding phase where I was collecting. I mean, now that I have a mortgage, that's that habit is greatly curtailed. But yeah, I'm sure you went through this as well. Once you get into something, you really get into it and you join the community, you start finding out what the rare and limited bottles are, and then you feel FOMO, you have to get them. But it's just, I think everybody goes through that phase
It's
with
tricky,
something
man.
or
It's
other.
a big it's a big whiskey because there's no like IRA or 401k type retirement scheme in Scotland. So a lot of people, actually, I shouldn't say a lot, but it's very much a thing to invest in whiskey and whiskey flipping, and it appreciates in value. That's the other thing.
Hmm.
It's a very conservative investment, actually.
Hmm.
And it's the whiskey auctions, the different places you can kind of get into the scene. It's quite avid if you're looking for it. But I've been trying to resist for a while because when I was in LA and I had to leave to move here, suddenly I had to liquidate my entire bar. And I
Hmm.
was like, well, I mean, it was fun, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to, not knowing how long I'll be here, I didn't want to spend all this time acquiring inventory, not knowing where I'm gonna end up, have to ship it, etc., which costs money. Um, but of course, it happens.
It
Get
just,
exposed
it
to new
happens,
things. And,
especially if you are
mhm,
talking to other enthusiasts and then
mhm.
they, clue you into things you didn't know about. And then it's just like uncovering this secret world. And then before you know it, you have more bottles than you could drink in a lifetime, which I mean, we're moving now. And so I'm actually trying to get rid of bottles, like bottles that I bought back in the day before I knew what was good or not. And I'm like, I'm never going to drink that bottle. And so it's just time to get rid of it.
You should gift it.
I got some stuff. I've got a compass box I might gift to you. It's only like 2/3 or one
Which one?
third empty. The Orchard House.
Yeah, solid, solid.
Yeah.
It's just cherried space side one.
Yeah, yeah. I think you had it when you were over
Mhm.
that first day you came over. I think I gave you some. Speaking of which, what were your favorite whiskeys of 2023?
Mm, mm. That's a great question. So I've, unlike some other things, I haven't really been as at like I do a Goodreads, as you know, for all my
Hmm.
books I read to kind of remember them. I never kept a whiskey journal.
Hmm.
Instead, the people who I do tastings with on Thursdays, they have their notebook, they write down um, the notes on the nose, on the palate, the finish, what they associate, etc. I'm just like, all right, do I like it or not? Do I want to put this in my yes, I would get this again and recommend it to someone or not? I kind of have a much more shallow, if you will. No, that's not the right word, but I don't take it as studiously.
Seriously. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an enjoyment rather than like a
right.
job.
Hmm. I think actually one of the ones I really liked, Glendronach had a duty-free exclusive, which I think is discontinued, but it's like a rich sherried Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso finish.
Mm.
Um, just delicious. I have just one, maybe dram left in my bottle. I've been saving. This is the other thing with bottles, why I kind of seem to hoard them. I have just a tiny bit left in each one, so that when someone comes to visit, they want to try it, they can just have it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when we visited you, you gave us the entire um history of the Johnny Walker line, and you took us through each one of their bottles, and we ended it with Black Label. And so it
Hmm.
all culminated in Black Label, and I thought that was awesome.
Well, so for context for other listeners, so Johnny Walker did this promotional thing where so it's obviously a blend, right, from different regions, but they took the whiskeys that go into each region and bottled them separately. So you can kind
Hmm.
of taste what goes into each one, and then trying black at the end,
The
you
blend, yeah.
appreciate it much, much more.
Yeah, that was great. I do appreciate it much more after that because I never really thought about black like it was what I would drink in college or immediately after college. And so I never went back to it and actually kind of tried to understand what it was.
Yeah, I just have memories of Shri pouring it down my throat at Bing.
Good
No, but I
memories.
was at a was sorry, what was that?
Good memories.
Yeah, it was good memories. Yeah, but it was, I mean, now it's like water to me. It just tastes like college.
Hmm.
But I was at this tasting last week and they procured a bottle of 1970s Johnny Black. And of course, it stops aging once it's bottled, but over time, the character of the whiskey will acquire an old bottle taste, as you recall.
Hmm.
And it was just so, so smooth and different. And one thing that people don't realize, there's a lot of pretension about the single malts. Single malts are relatively new in the whiskey world in
Mm.
terms of their popularity and even their prevalence. In the 70s, it wasn't really a thing. So when you think about the popularity of Johnny Walker or Chivas, etc., um, historically, the stuff that our parents might have consumed, it was a different whiskey then. It was actually
Mm.
better as well.
Mm.
But single
Really?
malts kind of, I mean, Macallan did this amazing marketing campaign to kind of make single malts more special. And yeah, they're sharper and have bolder tastes and nowadays much more experimental. But there's a
Hmm.
lot of art that goes into blends, and
Yeah.
a lot of people don't appreciate that because of the pretensions about single malts.
Yeah. I mean, I just think the whiskey world is just topsy-turvy right now. Like nothing makes sense. But I
Mm.
do remember that red label that you gave me, the old one. Like that was fantastic.
Yeah.
That was just like the old bottle mustiness age.
Yeah, just notes of marmalade and like
Mm.
library. It's
Mhm. Old library books.
mhm.
You don't have any of that left, do you?
Yeah, oh yeah. I've been nursing that.
Okay.
That's a special occasion
We're
dram.
making we're making another Europe trip at some point this summer. And so I don't know if we'll come to Scotland, but maybe we'll find like a middle point where you could meet us and bring me a little sample.
You know, they're changing the policies for the TSA here, whatever they call it here, where it's no longer 100 milliliters that you'll be able to bring more. So I could actually legally transport that to you.
Awesome.
How about yourself? What was your favorite whiskey last year?
Um, I was lucky last year because I was able to spend time in Scotland and Japan.
Hmm.
And so um, one of the favorite uh, scotches I had was in Japan, and it was the Springbank Local Barley 10-year.
Mm.
And it was just fruit. It was just the most delicious fruit whiskey I've ever had in my life. So I would put that at the top. When it comes to American whiskey, you tried this one. It was the Old Carter that my friend Zubin bought for my wedding
Yeah,
gift.
that was really solid.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I'd never had one before, but Old Carter would be my favorite American whiskey, and I think Gold Spot would be my favorite Irish,
Mm.
and the favorite Scotch would be the local barley. I think those three would be my top whiskeys of the year.
I have a different one to switch out because Glendronach was just top of mind, but I think the best one I had last year was a Compass Box
Hmm.
Delos.
You were telling me about that, right? That's their top of the line one.
Yeah, and they don't make it anymore. There's a new top line one that they've released. So if there are bottles left, they're get them. But it was just like, yeah, it's a blend, but it's a blend of like 25-year plus whiskey. And
Whoa.
it was just,
What did it taste like?
I did take notes at this tasting
Hmm.
because it was the whiskey fringe and I had about 30 whiskeys. So I knew there's no way I could remember. I wanted to go back afterwards and just kind of go through them. So I have a little booklet somewhere with my notes, but couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
It was just that good. It just blew out your brain.
It really did. I just stopped to talk to them for a while and just hopefully try and get more, but no dice.
I think you told me about this whiskey a few months back, and I searched for it online, and my local Total Wine has it.
Mm,
But it's like a close to a $300 bottle. I
yeah,
I
that's the
believe. Yeah,
thing.
that's the
That's the
thing,
thing.
right? But one day, well, I'll buy it as a housewarming gift for myself.
Yeah, right. One day I can just leisurely indulge in that kind of purchase. Until then, I look for the sales.
Yeah, but I mean, you're part of a pretty baller whiskey club. Like you get to try a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, the exposure is great. This and also because it's all subsidized, they sell the leftovers also at
Hmm.
discount. So that's kind of really how I've acquired so many. It's not because I'm
So many
buying these
bottles.
new bottles that I could never afford.
I think we should take a trip to Ireland and go to the Middletown distillery.
I'd be happy to. That's a short flight away.
Mm. So what are your morals plans for the weekend?
So Saturday's over. I mean, it's 9 p.m. here.
Mm.
So we're gonna hang out, work on a puzzle. That's kind of how we decompress in the evenings. We tend to both have a lot of screen time, and
Mm.
puzzling is a way we can just kind of hang out, enjoy each other's company, do something with our
Hmm.
hands. I think that's really important as we're kind of just so in our heads
Yeah.
today.
I've found something similar. Like I spend so much time on the laptop that
Hmm.
after work, I don't want to go back on the laptop and write my novel. I mean,
Hmm.
sometimes I do, but what I've discovered is now I just have a notebook, and so I'll write ideas, dialogue, paragraphs for the novel by hand.
Mm.
And it's such a decompression from just like this
Mm.
focus on a screen and email, Teams, all of that. And I just feel like that's really integral for the creative process is to get away from a screen and to work with your hands.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm doing now.
It's great, man. And it's cold here now, but when it's warm, like we have a little garden back and just
Hmm.
playing in the dirt, weeding for some reason is very cathartic. I really surprisingly, just take like 15, 20 minutes, go pull some weeds out.
Yeah, just put your hands in dirt. There's something weirdly therapeutic about that.
Something really, yeah. Well, it's not just, we're well past. We're in. I'm not gonna get into a whole lecture now about where we are as a society because this is not in session and we're running out of time. But we didn't evolve to be at computers and sit at desks throughout the day.
Mm-mm.
We're very much came from civilization of farmers, all of us. And industrialization changed that, and then the computer era changed that further, the information era, whatever you want to call it. So our bodies are collective conscious, if you will, and I mean that in the way that it was originated, not the way it's kind of bandied. Still remembers that's kind of where
Hmm.
at home.
Right. I think that's where like most of our anxiety comes from. It's like your body wants to be out in the sunshine,
Mhm.
wants to be walking on grass and sand and water, but we're hunched over a screen. And it's just, for me at least, I feel like anxiety is your body telling you that you're not in the right place, doing the right thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, you
Not to
know.
mention the other pressures that kind of prevent that, having
Hmm.
to provide um and other kind of issues that just detract. Granted, we're living a lot longer. Healthcare is advanced, etc., but access to that is harder. And
Right. It's harder, more expensive. We're also living longer because the threats to us have been mitigated, like wild animals and certain diseases.
mhm.
I do think we should do like a SIGRO alumni camping trip somewhere.
Yeah, you should lead that effort. I mean, you're in Colorado, so that's like perfect. I mean, where better than do it?
Yeah. Although I was thinking about there's a hiking trail you can do between the distillery in Scotland where you're not really camping outside. You can if you want, but there's inns between the distillery. So you hike to one inn, you spend the night, then you hike to a distillery, and then you hike to another inn and spend the night. I think
Mhm.
that would be fantastic.
One of the cool things also about Scotland is it's a right to roam country where you can
Hmm.
effectively camp anywhere. And throughout the Highlands, there are these huts that are, protecting from the elements. There's a bed, there's table, there's shelving, there's toiletry, etc. Um, Even canned food, they leave it for the next person. It's totally integrated into the country.
Hmm.
So while it wouldn't really be suitable for a large group, maybe a handful of people could do that if they were on the cheap trying to just get out, experience Scotland.
Yeah. That I think they have that on the Appalachian Trail here too. They have
Mm,
little shelters, first come, first serve.
hmm.
Mm, that red breast, very special.
I know, man. It's so smooth. Even at cast strength, it just really hits.
Yeah. Are you doing a third one to end off the evening? Because I
I
was thinking
could.
about going to this.
Ooh. Speaking of cast strength, speaking
Hmm.
of cast strength, I did not bring another bottle. I'll have to pause to get another bottle,
That's
but
fine.
I do have some. I will be right back.
All right.
So the bottles are
All right.
downstairs, but I have a little
What is
sample
this?
pour.
Glen Alecky 12 year.
Chinkapin Virgin Oak.
And what's the proof on that?
Does not say, I can look it up, but Glenallachie is probably my favorite Speyside distillery.
Mm.
Um, Billy Walker, who's a legendary distiller, purchased this from Chivas Brothers, and kind of in the twilight of his career, he's just kind of makes really interesting whiskeys and cask finishes.
Hmm.
And I don't think I've actually had this one yet, so I've been saving this for the right occasion.
Oh, perfect. On my side, I have the Blue Spot single pot still Irish whiskey, aged 7 years, matured for at least 7 years in bourbon barrels, sherry butt, and Madeira casks. And this is bottled at 117.8 proof.
You're gonna have a fun afternoon.
Well, I'm just pouring a splash, my friend. Like I was telling you before we started, I did dry January, and this is my second dry January. Last year was really tough. This year was easier, and what we discovered is after not drinking for a month, we really weren't interested in drinking.
Hmm.
So we're already past the first week of Feb, and we just probably maybe had like one or two drinks total. It's strange, but
Well,
yeah,
it's
I
really
have
not
not touched my
conducive.
whiskey collection for over a month, and so I'm happy to go back and try a bunch of these
Yeah, I was
bottles
gonna
I have.
say being dry doesn't really isn't really conducive to your to minimizing your collection.
Yeah, I know. I know. What's the only thing that's going to minimize my collection is if I have a party and I just invite like 10 dudes who love whiskey, and then we can just burn through 3 or 4 bottles at least.
Yeah, I mean that was like the night before your wedding.
Yeah. Yeah, we killed a lot of good. We didn't kill anything, but a lot of those bottles are at least half done.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Quality, all quality. That
Yeah,
was great.
that's how we do, man. No cheap whiskey where we hang out.
No, no.
Cheers.
L'chaim, Slanjava.
Langeva.
Mm. Oh, this is really nice.
Mm.
Jacob and Oak's kind of this novelty finish. There's only a
Mm-hmm.
handful of whiskeys that do it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Isle of Rossi does it. Teeling had a distillery exclusive from 2 years ago, which I purchased, which does it. But it's a really nice, kind of um, nutty taste to it. The finish.
Oh, nice. I know the stores around me have a bunch of Glenalleckys. Like they have the 10-year, the cask strength one,
Hmm.
and then 12, 15. They have an 11, but I don't think I've tried any. I don't think I tried any in
The
Scotland.
50 is incredible. I had that at the wedding. That bottle was gone very quickly. Um,
Did
and
I
then
try some of that? Was that at your reception?
that was it was before the reception. It was the first night,
Oh, yes, the first
the
day at the
welcome barbecue.
castle. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had it. I had it. That was good.
But they have an 8 series of different oaks, like Scottish oak, Hungarian oak, like etc. French oak. Um, the Scottish oak I thought was the best, but it's we all different palates. But yeah, they're very fun and experimental. That's why I really enjoy them.
Have you ever been to the distilleries?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which ones?
So that trip, I went on a trip with my wife's parents or her father actually last last November, so November of 2022, I think. And we started here and then went up to Speyside. So we went to Glenallachie, that was one of them. Went to Aberlour, which was
Hmm.
great. The distillery wasn't open itself. We went to the tasting room, but that was
Hmm.
a phenomenal experience. I picked up one of the bottles of distillery exclusive 11-year-old, the American oak, because Aberlour is very sherried. It's kind of what you
Hmm.
associate with it. So the American oak version was a bit of an anomaly. Went there, went to Glenfarclas, which
Hmm.
was wonderful. Um, Spent the night in Elgin and head over to Skye, went to Talisker. But I've been to a few others. I've been to um, Glengoyne, which is
Hmm.
on the border of the lowlands and highlands. There's Deanston, which is very
Yeah.
industrial, used to be kind of a um, cotton mill type distillery repurposed for
Hmm.
whiskey. There's a few others I've been to, just can't. Oh yeah, I did a whole West Highland whiskey trip I forgot about. Did Ardnamurchan, which is excellent. They're a newer player in the game, but lovely
Uh-huh.
peated whiskey. Nick Neen, which is a younger distillery as well, kind of female owned organic whiskey, kind of one of those hipper type of branding. Ben Nevis. What else? I couldn't do the whiskey trip this year because I had a conference presentation on the last day and had to take the train down to Manchester, which was a huge pain because I would have loved to.
Uh,
It was an Isla trip too.
that is a bummer. That would have been the trip.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
is what
well,
it
you could have
is.
gone to Lagavulin, Boonhaven, all of those.
They went to all of them. Kauila, Kilkerran, they did all of it. And yeah, heard it was great, but got to do my academic thing.
Oh, well, I can't get them all.
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately. I really wanted to go to do the Campbelltown tasting and try Springbank.
If
Um,
you do that trip, make sure you tell me a few months beforehand because I will go on that trip with you.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, before I leave, I don't know when I'm going to leave Scotland, but before I do, that has to
Mm.
happen.
It has to happen. Just give me some notice because I definitely want to go back to Scotland while you guys are still there because
Hmm.
we had a great time. How many times have I visited? Twice. We went twice to see
Twice.
you. Yeah, for your wedding and then one the year before we
Hmm.
stayed with you. Yeah.
Yeah, you've
We
been
got
here
to
the most.
do what's that?
You've been here the most.
I know, and we gotta get the trilogy in. We gotta get the third trip in before you guys are out because I don't know. I love Scotland. I don't know what it is about the place. It's not just the whiskey, it's just the people and the history of Edinburgh, the architecture. I just
It's
definitely a
a very
trip I need to
inviting
make.
place, and people don't really know about it. It's like, yeah, there's Braveheart and there's the way it's depicted in Hollywood and such, but you don't really meet if you're not in the UK, you rarely will meet someone from Scotland and as opposed to England. And the reason for that is massive class differences. It's very much a working class country, which has a history of being subjugated by English, especially. The wealth is concentrated by people who have either been English or were put in by the English, broadly speaking, not of course all the time, but so there's a resentment there. And there's a saying also, Edinburgh being a more posh city compared to Glasgow, the capital, which is more industrial, that if you're from Edinburgh, you're not really Scottish because of how
Hmm.
posh it is.
Yeah, I can see that. I do want to visit Glasgow.
Hmm.
I stopped by there for just a few hours last time to see a friend, but I've heard it's a cool city.
Yeah, that's where more of the cultural scene is. Cultural in I don't mean like the art. Well, art's a little bit, but I meant more like the multicultural scene.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Like more modern, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a post-industrial city, so they're still kind of figuring it out in some ways.
Yeah, that's what my friend was telling me. Like, there's just been a lot of change and shift and
Mhm.
uncertainty in the city. And you could see it, but it's still one of those cities that has a lot of charm and people are proud of living there. So, you know,
Lowest life expectancy in
really?
Scotland. Yeah.
Oh, geez,
Yeah.
that's sad.
There's
Well,
reasons for that.
on that note,
And on a high one. Are you done with your dram already?
no, I got a little bit left.
All right. Because I know you wanted to wrap up 15 minutes ago, so we'll
That's
take the
fine. Yeah,
race.
we can take like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Kill this one. Mm.
Hmm. So my next book that I'm gonna be reading after Dune. I started already because I like to kind of have two things going depending on my mood. It's called Mist by this Spanish author. This is written like 1926. Um, and it's kind of it was recommended by a friend like a decade ago, and I'm finally getting to it. It's kind of a psychological expose into a bachelor, an aristocratic bachelor who's trying to figure out is he in love? Is he in love with the idea of love, etc.? It's one of those books I probably should have read when it was recommended to me because at this
Yeah.
life it's not really resonating as much.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's how it goes.
you can't read those books as a married man. They speak to a different part of your life.
Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
books change you, but you also change, and it's yeah, the time and place makes a huge difference.
Hmm. I do want to
It's funny.
recommend a book to you, but I don't think you'll enjoy it.
Oh, that's probably goes without saying, but go ahead.
Yeah. You know what? I'm not going to recommend it. We'll save it for later.
Mm, mm. It's the hmm. Yeah, it's like I bought all these sci-fi books, these classic sci-fi books that I've, been on my list for a while that I keep reading about on like the sci-fi forums on Reddit and such. But I think I've reached this point, and I'm not sure when I got there, but I think I'm ready to take a break from sci-fi and read in a different genre. And I'm not sure what that's gonna look like, but we'll see what kind of speaks to me as I kind of figure that out.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I can only read so much sci-fi before I have to get back to something that's grounded in
Right.
like the modern world. Um, I'm trying to find what that next book is. So, because I was reading a lot of Tom Clancy, like I've
Mm,
never read his books, but I love the movie that his books are based off of. Uh, and so not his books, but the movies based off his books. But so I started reading Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger, and those are great books, but they're very detail-oriented thrillers, right? Like he'll give you the detail of every single like technology or institution that's part of the book. And so after that, I want to read something a little bit more human scale. And
yeah.
so that's why I've gone back to Journey by Moonlight.
Yeah, fair enough. That's totally fair. Because it's even though he's not writing sci-fi per se, it's still written in the hard sci-fi style of just over detail and explaining.
Yes.
And I find it exhaustive, especially when you're trying to decompress from things.
Right, right. And it requires a lot of work of your imagination.
Mm.
And it's like one step removed. Like really good sci-fi is not, but most sci-fi is like one step removed from the human experience.
Hmm.
Uh, like the problems are huge, they're world ending. Whereas sometimes you want to read a book where a guy is just struggling to find his way in life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's something to be said for that. And just kind of not that it's like a trashy romance, but it doesn't have not everything has to be war and peace, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. Some things can be a little bit lighter reading.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll save that one for my Twilight years.
All right, I'm gonna kill my dram. Cheers.
Mm, that's delicious.
Hmm.
Rishi, always a pleasure, man. I know we don't get to talk that often these days, but always enjoy it when we do.
Yeah, same. We can do these Zoom calls when they're not official. We can just check
Yeah.
in from time to time. Whiskey time.
Whiskey time, I like it.
Yeah.
It has to be earlier for you. I mean, you're 7 hours behind, so it's you got to do a little day drink.
Yeah, do it before your bedtime. All right.
Yeah,
Next time we'll do it
exactly.
in the morning, but I can't drink in the morning. So we'll do coffee hour.
Whatever. Well, you can do coffee. I'll do whiskey.
Okay. Fine. You do Irish coffee.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, boss. Good talking to you.
You too. Much love.
Till next time.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.